But first, it might seem to be backed by the wrong premier, but Saskatchewan Premier Brad Wall and 10 U.S. governors dispatched a letter to the White House today advocating full speed ahead for the Keystone Pipeline. Premier Brad Wall joins us from Saskatchewan. Premier, welcome to the show. Nice to have you on. And I'm just curious why you're spearheading this, because the way I read my geography, there's not a whole lot of oil sands in Saskatchewan to export on that pipeline.
Well, a couple things. First of all, we've been pretty vocal on Keystone in support of Canada's position and Alberta's position. We've taken a number of speaking engagements when they've been offered to me and to make this case last year to the Speakers Conference in South Carolina, another one in Phoenix. The Keystone goes to the broader issue of trade between our countries and the branding of Canadian exports, specifically the branding of Canadian oil. We're Canada's second largest producer of oil, so we work with Alberta on this particular file and others. And we were happy today to have 10 governors, plus the governor of Montana, who was part of the press release. The Democratic governor of Montana indicate support for Keystone. A couple of other more points of self-interest, Don. You know, Keystone can help reduce or eliminate the differential between West Texas Intermediate, that's what Saskatchewan taxpayers get paid for their oil right now, and Brent crude. Brent crude's worth about $15 a barrel more. For our treasury in the province of Saskatchewan, that's a $300 million loss, if you will, or opportunity cost. For our industry, it's a $2 billion cost. We need to close that differential. You do that through projects like Keystone. Finally, Keystone will also, 1 in 7 barrels of oil in Keystone will be a conventional oil from the Bakken Formation that exists in the province of Saskatchewan, but also in North Dakota and Montana, though through horizontal drilling, we're trying to get some of it back. But because of that, we have capacity issues in terms of pipeline in this very busy oil patch. So any relief from Keystone is good for the province. So we think this project's good for the U.S. in terms of jobs and taxes. We think it's good for Canada for the same reasons. But also there's real benefits to the province of Saskatchewan. And again, we're grateful for the support from the governors today.
I think you covered my next 7 questions in that one answer, but I do want to point out, though, that you did get 6 of the governors actually have state or governed states that are traversed by the pipeline. The one that's missing, or I thought was notably missing, is Nebraska. That's kind of where the pipeline is running into its Waterloo, if you will. And yet, I saw a study that came out today that said that state alone gets $2 billion worth of business if the pipeline goes through. Why are they so reluctant on that? Because they were going to reroute the pipeline around that environmentally sensitive area.
They are. The rerouting is now moving around that aquifer that you're referencing. I'm pretty hopeful. I had a chance to talk to Governor Hyman now about a year ago when he originally made some comments after the rerouting proposal from TransCanada that were much more positive. The state has since commissioned a report on Keystone. That report is out. The report notes that, look, bitumen in a pipeline is no different than oil in a pipeline. Most of the aquifer issues are addressed. The governor, when the report came out a couple of weeks ago, said he'd take 30 days to come to a decision. I'm actually pretty optimistic that they're going to come out and support in a couple of weeks for this. And again, the project would be helped by that support. We do have a lot of other governors who are on the route and some who aren't, who just understand the importance of North American energy independence and this particular pipeline.
One person who's not quite so optimistic, Premier Wall, is former Alberta Premier Ed Stelmach. He said he doesn't think the pipeline is going to get approved this year, and as my next guest will talk about, the Pembina Institute is in Washington rallying opposition to it in U.S. environmental groups and others. Are you worried that this president, lame duck president that he is going to chicken out or delay or what on this project? Is that why you're taking this stance so early?
I think we're all concerned, and we should be, but I've asked a number of people on south of the border who might have some knowledge of where the administration's going, and even officials on our side. As you know, Don, the province of Saskatchewan doesn't have a trade office in Washington, but we're grateful to contract David Wilkins, a former U.S. ambassador to our country, and he's helped with this project. What we hear when asked that question, what are the chances of it getting approved, is pretty universal, and that is folks really don't know. They'll say things like it's a 50-50 proposition. That's why it is important that we take these steps now, that we take back the branding of Canadian energy, which I think has been misrepresented by certain groups. But we also speak to the fact that 1 in 7 barrels of oil in the pipeline, should it be approved, is actually American oil, light sweet crude from the Bakken. So we need to touch all of these points, and I think now is the time. I think the decision, people are expecting it within the next number of weeks to months.
I was struck by the story that had you reminding Foreign Affairs Minister John Baird. He was in Regina this week saying to him, hey, I see you're discussing natural resources with First Nations at the Aboriginal Summit. Lest we forget, natural resources are provincial jurisdiction. Are you saying the wrong person's at the table talking to Aboriginal groups?
No, and Minister Baird was pretty clear. He said, look, we absolutely understand that. The issue was raised by the First Nations leaders in the room. It was one of the 8 points that they raised, and I don't think there was a lot of notice about which 8 points they'd be raising with the federal government. Still, as a Premier for Saskatchewan, I need to be able to stand up for our interests, and I think it's important that we clarify, just for the record, that natural resources are the purview of the jurisdiction under the Constitution of the provinces, and I wanted to make that known. Don, we had an election campaign here just over a year ago, and one of the key questions in that campaign was on the issue of natural resource revenue sharing, and we campaigned very explicitly on a policy that goes something like this. It remains our policy today, that every time we build a hospital or a highway or invest in education or use any of those resource revenues to deliver a public good, we are sharing those resources. We are sharing them equally with everyone. That remains the position of our government. We won't look at a separate deal or a special deal for any particular group, and we needed to restate that position pretty clearly. We're interested in benefit sharing, we're interested in employment and education initiatives with First Nations, but not formulaic revenue sharing.
I need to be quick on this because I'm out of time, but 10 years ago, there were no Lamborghinis or Aston Martins in Saskatchewan registered. Now there's 17 Lamborghinis, 17 Aston Martins. What's that tell you about the prosperity of the province?
First of all, I did not know that. Well, it's pretty hopeful because if people can afford those, more families can afford the SUV or the minivan they want, and obviously we have some wealth being attracted to the province. And on game day when the Riders play, you'd like to see all kinds of those cars in the parking lot.
And hopefully go home happy. All right, Premier Brad Wall, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Don. Take care.